Hello again. We are back and continue with the session Technology and Production. We have a couple of changes. Ilaria asked to present the next day, while Beatrice had to cancel her participation in the conference at the last minute. Instead of Ilaria, we will hear Jasna Vukovic and Boban Tripkovic. And now, without further ado, I call Carlo Demitri to present his work on the Apollo Lucanian Hellenistic ware, an entangled node between Aegean and Italic pottery productions, the mold-made ware. Please, Carlo.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to participate in this conference. And thanks, the organizers. Okay. The opening up of markets following Rome's expansion into Ionian Adriatic and then the Aegean inaugurated a season of great artisan and commercial vitality throughout the Ionian Adriatic basin. This sector guaranteed a link between the Italic and the Aegean Eastern world. Transport amphorae are the main indicator for the study of trade in this period. In the late Hellenistic or late Republican phase, the most widespread amphorae were those of Adriatic production, the ovoid, and especially the Lambolia II, made in various workshops in the Italian peninsula. Amphorae made on the opposite eastern banks seem to be limited to a short-range circulation and not interest in large-scale trade. In this general context, it is important to examine the Metapontine type amphorae, which is a sign of a trade that involved the Strait of Otranto, both sides of the western coast of the Ionian Sea. This amphora is characterized by a banded flowered rim with a concave face and a largest edge, cylindrical neck, ovoid body and short bottom, oval or a larger ribbon-like handles placed on the shoulder and under the rim. Such amphora are attested along the Ionian Arch, especially in the production areas of Metaponto and Heraclea, and the neighboring areas on the coast from Taranto to Santa Maria di Leuca, and particularly in the Messapian Calabro area, and inland to Gravina, between Lucanian and Apula region. The report of a specimen found in the filling of the cistern at Acre confirms the arrival of this object in the hinterland of Syracuse. Finally, the presence of this object is attested in Strait of Otranto, both on the western bank in Otranto itself and in the eastern bank. In the recent excavation in Orikos, Albania, a large number of amphorae have been recovered that attested to a circulation between the 2nd and the beginning of the 1st century BC. While Lambolia II is predominant, other classes are recognized, including amphorae of Metapontine type. The distribution map TUS created shows a route from Syracuse along the Ionian Arch and the Strait of Otranto to southern Illyria, following the route of Syracusan merchants who in Plautus Menechmi, a playwright at the beginning of the 2nd century BC, indicates a trade route linking Syracuse to Epidamno Durazzo via Taranto. In addition, there is a similarity between the two shores of the Southern Adriatic and Northern Ionian Sea in terms of amphora production due to the presence of the same type, for example, the case of Metapontum, where Corinthia R1 or Heraclea amphorae are produced with Corinthia B, and even the presence of recurring names in stems of Brindisi and Aegion. Thus, if the data on the production of amphorae and circulation of goods containing them give us a pictures of strong connectivity of this sector, other information on certain classes of ceramics shows us how the mobility of people with technical and manufacturing skills ensured the circulation of knowledge. One of the most successful classes of the late Hellenistic period was mold-made ware. Production sites of mold-made ware are attested throughout the Mediterranean, especially in the area between Western Greek and the South Illyria. It was from there that this technique could then have come to the West. In Italy, the production is documented in some areas, and such pottery seems to have a short-range circulation. This is the case of Apulian Lucanian mold-made pottery, which had manufacturing centers in Taranto, Metapontum, and Heraclea. This ware shares a similar morphological repertoire, as well as probable preference for gray, in line with other production from the same phase. The Taranto mold documents an iconographic repertoire with panoplias, for example, not present in other production. This melting pot also includes the technique of applied relief. This technique, although now from different areas of the Mediterranean, found its greatest development already in the early Hellenistic period in the Western area. The extensive use of the applied relief with medallions on the inner bottom of the open forts is found in Etruria and Campania in the early Hellenistic period. But it is above all from the late Hellenistic period that the medallion boards are made in different areas throughout Mediterranean. The data from Heraclea di Lucania document the coexistence of two productions. The local one, this, is of Campanian and Sicilian derivation. Alongside this, we find specimens which are always imported from Aegean East. This is clearly because the technical and the characteristic is not common in Sicilian and Campanian production. The in-depth study of the attestation of the medallion boards in the Ionian Adriatic Basin therefore documents the existence of two areas, that of Tyrrhenian origin, with reference to the production of Campania and Sicily, and the Aegean Eastern one. It is possible to establish a link between Campanian and Sicilian production and to identify Syracuse as the main center of reception and diffusion of new style in the Ionian Arch. Crossing the data discussed here with software borrowed from the social network analysis, it's clear how the Ionian Arch is interested in a network. The Ionian Arch, this and this. Even it's not possible to establish the direct connection and who influenced whom, a strongly entangled sector emerges between Taranto and Syracuse, where Aegean and Italic influence meet on Manu-Greek background. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlo, for your interesting presentations. We have plenty of time for questions.
Okay.
Are there any? Carlo, can you please stop sharing your screen?
Okay. Just a moment. Okay. Now.
Thank you. Obviously, it was all clear in this presentation. We move further, and I call our next presenter is Flora Miele. His title of her presentation is Ars Ornamentum, Analysis of the Decorative Repertoire Present on Tin Glazed Wares of Southern Production from Cencele, province of Viterbo. Please, Flora.
Yes.
Start sharing your screen. Please.
You see my
Yes, everything is all right.
Sorry, presentation. No, lo puoi farlo dopo. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. On the occasion of the Belgrade Conference on Archaeology Pottery, we intended to share the preliminary results that emerged from the research on ceramic material found in the city of Leopoli Cencelle, focusing in particular on the decorative repertoire present on some tin-glazed ceramic artifacts produced all probably in southern Italy between the 13th and 14th century. Leopoli Cencelle is a city surrounded by the Tolfa Mountains in the heart of the northern Lazio, currently affluent to the province of Viterbo. We are facing a city of papal foundation. This is what emerges from the Liber Pontificalis of the Roman Church in the biography of Pope Lion IV. The category of artifacts object of this analysis refers to fine table ceramics, characterized by a thin glaze applet only on the exposed wall of the forms both opened and closed, with decorations made essentially with the colors brown, green, and yellow, or with the bluish blue instead of green. The decorative and the morphological aspects analyzed in this first phase on the research refer to proto-Maiolica, a term now obsolete but which continues to be used today to indicate a production of fine table ceramics, active between the 13th and 14th centuries in diversified centers located mainly in southern Italy, Apulia, Campania, Sicily, and in the light of a recent study, also in the Campania, Lazio, and Abruzzo territories. At the moment, the tin glazed ceramic artifacts amount to a total of 101 units from sectors 1, 2, and 3, from the tank of sector 2, from sector 6, the church, and 7, the cemetery. The analytical investigation was completed only for some sectors, for which the percentages relating to the different ceramic classes found here as shown. Therefore, for the distribution concentration of this particular category of ceramic, we refer to a more mature phase of research. As previously said, at the current state of research, the sector investigated returned 101 of this particular ceramic class. The graphs show the minimum number of specimens, which corresponds to the total of rims and the reconstructible profiles found within the investigated sectors. In order not to lose any useful information for the understanding of the ceramic material, it seemed particularly significant to observe in parallel also the minimum number of found bottoms. The two values thus obtained should not be added up but observed simultaneously. It is first of all evident that open forms predominate over closed forms, and both fall within the fine tableware. Once again, more information is related to the types of open forms, characterized by an often perforated ring bottom. Among these, balls clearly predominate, followed then by plates and basins. The morphological types identified recall both those of Brindisi production and the Tavoliere area, and those that can be framed in Campania and Sicily production of the Gelaware type. As far as closed forms are concerned, the morphological typology of the jug seems to present itself either with an enlarged rim and truncated neck, or with a long neck that flares at the mouth. During the first phase of the research, the cataloging of the impastos was done by macroscopic observation of the fractures with the help of a digital microscope and a stereo microscope with 20 to 40 magnification lenses. Different impastos were distinguished by this method, which, at the end of the research on the materials under examination, will be subjected to specific archimetric analysis so as to ascertain or not the macroscopic subdivision of the impastos. However, waiting for more complete results here, it was therefore considered useful to examine the decorative apparatus present on 42 fragments attributable to one type of impasto, the only one at the time of which the mineropetrographic analysis are available, carried out on one sample, sample 1. The analyzed impasto is very fine, purified, and characterized by a calcareous clay, absent of microfossils, whose mineralogical component is defined by micaceous inclusions and some potassic feldspars that could derive from a volcanic environment. No bibliographic matches with the other slurries are currently found. However, the analysis of the ceramic bodies, of the vasculous forms, and of the decorative repertoire related to the shards pertinent to this type of impasto leave one to hypothesize with all cautions to a production afferent to southern Italy, in particular to that of Campania, with strong aware references to the production of northern Apulia. Borrowing terms used in art historical circles, the organization of the decorative program can be divided into registers. Thus, for open forms, we have the first, second, and the third register, corresponding respectively to main decorations placed in the center, secondary decorations present on the interior walls, and finally, accessory decorations with the repetitive module painted on the brims. As for the closed forms, the decoration is limited to the upper part of the body, shoulder, neck, and the handle, thus defining in order of succession first, second, third, and fourth register. This type of organization implies the tendency of the maker of ceramic decoration to eliminate all empty space with ornamentation by bringing out what is called precisely horror vacui, or the horror of emptiness, a tendency that characterizes the medieval ages. The thin glazed pottery specimens examined showed a vast iconographic repertoire, and only a few shards made it possible to identify and reconstruct some decorative motifs. Specular triangles arranged horizontally, small arcs, small half moons, a motif probably of Islamic tradition, also tested on thin glazed specimens from Alifano in the Caserta area, and on some glazed pieces from Velia in the Salerno area of Maghreb production. Finally, diagonal bands. In the cavettos of the open forms, both phytomorphic and zoomorphic motifs have been identified, often circumscribed by one or running below the rim. Among the phytomorphic motifs recurs a decorative pattern typical of 13th century southern Italy, namely the first spindles profiled and namely the front spindles profiled in brown and filled in green and yellow, alternating with geometrical and or phytomorphic motifs. Another motifs identified on sandstone ceramics is that of the bush with rhomboidal leaves, which finds characterized by small islets. Curious is the lily ray motif found identically on the bottom of a glazed bowl with monochrome decoration in green found at San Lorenzo Maggiore in Naples. Among the zoomorphic motifs, only the ornithomorphic type is recognized. If on one specimen only the little legs of the bird are visible, in another the head is discernible, and the upper part of the body characterized by a neck rendered with manganese brown plumage and a coat with dark scales attested in areas of southern Italy, especially in Naples, Avellino, and northern Apulia. This seems to be a realistic rendering of plumage that is also found in other birds depicted in various works. See, for example, some miniatures from the Arti Venandi Cumavibus or the large eagle above the 13th century ambo in the Cathedral of Bitonto in the province of Bari, Apulia. Regarding the closed forms, there are small numbers of fragments that have allowed a proper interpretation and reconstruction of the iconographic motifs. A few motifs pertinent to the first register have been identified. Geometric motif within Merope, characterized by a checkerboard motif containing drop-shaped decorations with lateral sequences characterized by vertically arranged chevrons. Sequence of chevrons arranged horizontally contained in bands and horizontal green and brown. Such decoration refers to Brindisi and Irpinia production of the late 13th and early 14th centuries. Finally, sequence of vertical bands and line. The organization of the decorative program is provided almost entirely by two bowls, one with a hemispherical profile A and the other with a keeled profile B. What they have in common is the iconographic pattern of the second register, consisting of a series of bands in yellow and or green, separated by wavy line in brown, subtended by a line in brown placed below the rim. What differentiates the decorative repertoire of these two bowls is the third register, present only on bowl B and consisting of small arcs along the brim and the first register. In bowl A, an 8-pointed star with a crescent moon flanking it, a motif of Islamic ancestry, is evident in the center of the cavetto, while the main motif on bowl B is represented by a probable extreme stylization of a four-lobed phytomorphic ornament with loops sampled in green at the points of junction. Both bowls show an iconographic rendering of the ornamentation that is not too refined, probably intended for undermated buyers or made by not highly skilled labor. This can be deduced, for example, for the brush strokes, not too precise, the color used, and the dosage of the same. In order to get clarification about the nature of the glaze, which appeared to be severely deteriorated, two fragments of Protomaiolica, one of which is a sample one pertaining to bowl A, were selected, both of which can be traced back to the same type of impasto. Same ADS mapping revealed for both samples a glaze consisting of lead, silica, and tin with the presence of some alkali. As for the decorations, at the moment, we have the results pertinent to the brown decoration, whose analysis attested the presence of iron oxide and manganese. For the characterization of the other colors used in the decoration, yellow and green, we refer to further analysis that will be carried out at a more advanced stage of the research. In particular, on ball A, by analyzing at both autopsy and the microscope levels, the strokes rendered by the brush strokes in brown and the distribution of colors used in the decoration, a possible scan of the phases related to the colorative practice is proposed. Starting with the earliest phases, we identify one phase, the decorator traces in brown, two phase, the decorated traces in yellow, and phase 3, the decorator traces in green. This is hypothesized and proposed as a possible case, since it can be seen that the line in brown is covered by both green, points 1 and 2, and yellow, point 3, which, however, is itself covered by green, point 4. In conclusion, it can be said that this type of ceramic class fits well within a cultural and social context in which, from the middle of the 13th century, a more articulated social arrangement is recorded for Cencelle, in which some individuals certainly had the possibility of adorning their tables with crockery purchased beyond the borders of Lazio, not only in southern Italy, but also in other regions of Italy and from Spain. The presence in Cencelle of tower houses in the city denotes the presence of a cadre of prominent people expressing their position in society through the construction of these buildings. In a list of castellans present in the civitas from 1304 to 1000. In 196 list of castellans present in the civitas from 1304 to 1370, at least two names betray a French origin. This called to mind the Angevin domination that marked the Roman and Latian historical events from 1263 to 1335, and by virtue of the intervening link between the Roman Church and the Crown, even allowing oneself to be influenced by these ultramontane presences, the presence of glazed ceramics produced in the Angevin realm does not seem so strange. I'm finished.
Thank you, Flora.
Sorry for the last moment.
Thank you for a comprehensive presentation. It encompassing several very interesting topics. So thank you again. Have you, dear colleagues, any question? Michaela, question for Flora. Thank you for this detailed analysis of thin glazed ware. I wonder whether you used an unpolished shard or a polished sample for SCM analysis. What was the main variation between the glaze and the pigmented area? Can you see the question in the chat meeting chat?
Next, unmute.
Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, sorry. We have, hi Michela, we have utilized a sample not unpolished, because the first thing that we want to do is to ascertain of revestment of fragment, because in the first moment these fragments like fragments with rivestimento composed with ingobbio under the glass, but the semi-DS is relevated in the part of glass, the percentual of tin, but the thing the interesting things is that in on the parts of manganese decorations is relevated some percentuals of tin, and this is have to do study in a more profound way.
Yeah, thank you. Flora, sorry, I didn't understand whether it was polished or unpolished, whether you use a sherd and you put in the SEM, or you use, let's say, a fixed section. Se avete messo un coccio dentro, o se avete semplicemente levigato una sezione per il SEM.
No, abbiamo... se posso parlare in italiano, poi tradurgo in inglese.
Yes, thank you.
I can speak in Italian and after in English. If I can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Please
okay.
Continue.
Abbiamo selezionato in realtà un frammento, ma prendendo semplicemente una piccola parte con una piccola tronchesina, perché appunto inizialmente era proprio un'indagine per capire un attimo quale frammento si aveva di fronte, quindi non è stato né lucidato e insomma verranno poi successivamente effettuate comunque in una maniera molto più accurata delle analisi magari in sezione sottile per quanto riguarda insomma il SEM e tutte insomma le procedure del caso.
Grazie, perché puoi avere quello che si chiama skirting effect ancora più forte nel momento in cui tu usi il SEM su un coccio, perché il raggio del detector del SEM colpisce una determinata area, siccome stai guardando delle aree molto sottili, potrebbe cogliere anche la parte che la circonda e i numeri poi quantitativamente fanno parte della tua analisi che tu interpreti come the pigmented area oppure the glaze itself. Quindi se tu crei una sezione perfetta, ovviamente crei risultati diversi. Sorry for this shift to Italian.
Excuse me, can you make a short summary on English, in English, please?
Yes,
For those who doesn't understand.
I translate the fragments that are analyzed on the SEM are unpolished, not in fine section, because the motive principal of this first analysis is it was to understand the nature of glass for to recognize the fragment and recognize the ceramic class.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No. Excuse me. Now we'll hear Jasna Vukovic and Boban Tripkovic. They talk about culture melting pot, mixed pottery traditions in the 5th millennium Western Serbia. Please.
Thank you, Vesna. Just a second, I have to share my screen and to okay. I suppose that you can see the presentation, and I will ask Boban to give us a first several slides.
Thank you, Jasna. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can see me, you can hear me well. I will just give you a short introduction about research area, sites chronology, and cultural context in Western Serbia during 5th millennium. Could I have next slide? Okay.
Yes.
In our presentation, we are dealing with the region of Western Serbia, which is known as Mačva Plain. It is the area delineated by the river Sava and Drina to the north, east, and west, and by mountain Cer to the south. There are two geographic features of Mačva which have strongly influenced human behavior in the past. It also influenced our archaeological explanation. The first characteristic is that throughout the history and prehistory, it was flood-prone and wetland area. Even today, the water regime there is highly unstable. The second one is that Mačva represents a natural bridge between the Central Balkans and South Pannonia. That connection can also be seen in archaeological assemblages, which commonly contain cultural traits of both regions. Could I have next slide, please? In Western Serbia, there are around 450 prehistoric sites, and half of them can be dated to the 5th millennium. It is interesting, however, that based on published data, only a portion of them belong to early Copper Age, which is the second half of the 5th and the beginning of the 4th millennium. Although a small number of sites from that period have been recorded, recent research shows that their number could be significantly higher. The site from which Jasna and I will present some pieces of pottery originate from this period and has only recently become known in the literature. Once again, slide please.
Oops.
Once again. Okay, thank you.
Ah, sorry. Okay.
This is the site of Shanac Izba, located in the south of the Mačva Plain. It is a small settlement mound about 40 meters in diameter and closed by a wide ditch. Next slide, please. This site is not an isolated example. In the same region, there are about 50 similar sites that also originate from the same period. You can see some photos, old and new. They share the same characteristics. They are small mounds enclosed by a wide ditch. Based on small test trenches, geoarchaeological drillings, and magnetometer prospecting we have undertaken in recent years, the sites usually contain one to several buildings. Most of these sites were previously dated to the late Neolithic, but new research shows that they should be dated to the last centuries of the 5th millennium. Next slide, please. We are going back to Shanac Izba. The site was excavated with two small trenches, and the result is a burned building and 4 pits. Other finds include pottery, chipstone artifacts, and few clay weights, all of which actually point to a small population that occupied the site and whose diet was based on agriculture and livestock, as the findings suggest. Based on pottery and one absolute date, the site is dated to the last third of the 5th millennium. Next slide. What we don't know yet is how the small population that used the space at Shanat's Izba participated in the regional cultural dynamics. The assemblages at the site indicate regional mobility and mixing of population, also mixing of their cultural styles. For instance, there is a mix of pottery traditions which originate from the Central Balkans and Pannonia as well. Also, there is a piece of obsidian that indicates some mobility or participation in regional social networks. Finally, the structure of the chipstone industry, its typology and technology, corresponds well to wider regional trends. It again means tradition, mobility, and connectivity. How then the specific pieces of pottery found at the site can be understood in such cultural context? From here, I will ask Jasna to continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Boban. Yes, this is a very interesting pottery assemblage for this from this site of Shanat's Izba. And this site is not very different from other sites in the area because it exhibits to a great extent mixed assemblages. I mean, mixed pottery traditions, both Neolithic and of the early Copper Age. For example, there are specimens typical for Central Balkans, Buban culture like kantari, so-called kantari or beakers. And then the vessels which are typical for Lassinia culture of the West, as well as pedestal vessels like these on our slide, which are typical for Tisa Polgar or Lassinia cultures. We are not sure always because we have a highly fragmented assemblage, so we can only identify the feet of these vessels. So we cannot be sure if they are from Lassinia or Tisa Polgar culture. And of course, these are mixed pottery from different traditions, but it seems that there are some examples of mixed technologies or mixed trades from different traditions or technological or cultural hybrids, which is very interesting and poses new questions about the identities and communication and social relations in the area at the end of the 5th millennium. One of the very interesting finds is, in some reason, okay, is a fragment of vessel with the painted design of a running spiral at on the interior surface. So it is probably a dark red painting on red surface, on red slipped surface. Of course, it appears at this photo that the paint is white, but it is very possible that this is a consequence of some kind of post-depositional processes. So the color just changed to white. We have such examples on several sites in Serbia. But it is very peculiar because it is made in thick paint, in a thick layer of paint, which means on some spots, this spiral is so in relief, like you can touch it. It stands out almost a millimeter from the original surface. So this is a thick layer of paint, which is in contrast to painting traditions in the area, in the Balkans and in the West, like the second fragment on the photo, which is also red on red painted, but also in the interior, but with a completely different technology. So spirals, of course, are not something new because they exist in other tradition as well. Of course, in the early Neolithic, sorry, something is going wrong with my photos. Of course, in the early or Middle Neolithic Starčevo, in late Neolithic Butmir or Danilo, culture of the Adriatic in Langel also. But this kind of decoration occurs also in traditions later than our specimen, especially in the late Neolithic. They are so-called Bratislava type or Jevišovice type of bowls from the Bolero sculpture. And we want to point out in this case that maybe chronologically the closest find is the one from Langel tradition from Slovenia with incised spirals. But the peculiarity about this specimen is the fact that it is painted on the inside of the pot, and this spiral, of course, is not incised but painted, which is something, and painted also in a peculiar way, unusual way. Also, there is another hybrid. I hope that my pictures will show. I don't know what's going on. Okay, this is a foot of a pedestal vessel, probably of Lasinja or Tisapolgal culture. But if it is examined from a bit closer, you can see that it is decorated with hatched triangles, hanging triangles, which is a probably unusual spot for decoration, because these feet are not decorated usually. And of course, it is a kind of ornament which is not typical. It is not new, as we can see. Of course, like spirals that we showed earlier, hatched triangle, hanging triangles are present in the material from the early Neolithic until the cultures which are later than our specimen. But the position, what is peculiar here is the position of the ornament and its existence on a pot made in tradition lacking this kind of ornaments. So these finds pose new questions, of course. And as it is widely unknown from ethnoarchaeological research, decorative styles are more prone to change in contrast to manufacturing technique, which are conservative. And the motifs on the interior sides of the pots, of course, suggest the display purpose of the pot, implying that the motif was meant to be seen by users of the pots. So the question arises, of course, who were the users, who are the makers of this pot, and is this kind of decoration in any way connected with special status or prestige in any way? Also, the issue of hybridization of features belonging to different traditions or amalgamation processes is to a great extent neglected in the archaeology of the Balkans, but hybridization of different traditions was already identified in the intra-Neolithic transition of the Central Balkans, as well as in the late Neolithic in the Pannonian Plain in Hungary, modern-day in Hungary, as well as part of Croatia. So these processes obviously existed. Hybridization also includes so-called double objects containing features of different traditions. And the theoretical concept of social boundaries implies, among other things, the changes in the way the things have been always done, as people usually define technology or technological procedures, is triggered by the changes in social relations, or in other words, increased interactions between different social groups or different communities. They also influence boundary objects, the things that cross social boundaries, thus blurring the differences between different traditions. But it also means that rigid ways of knowledge transmission have been relaxed and the potters had more freedom in execution of motifs. But in this case, we must be cautious because we have only 2 specimens with mixed traits. And we are at the beginning of research, so I think it's more wise to, instead of conclusion, to pose several questions, especially how the message transmission on this spot can be connected with a small isolated settlement, with the small houses, probably with a limited number of people. Why are they there? And who were the users and producers of this vessel? Does in this case hybridity is a consequence of mixing of people, or it is some kind of increased communication or influences in a traditional way of archaeological thinking? What was the occasion that the vessels were used? And are these in any way special, connected with status, prestige, symbolic activities, and so on? And were these activities connected with special individuals or were they communal? So we have, of course, to think not only about group identities, but also about individual identities. And I'm sure that in the future we will have more information about these interesting topics. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jasna and Boban, for the very interesting presentation that shows motives of a very long existence as exemplary research of mixing pottery traditions and group identities, of course. So I ask for questions. Everything was clear, obviously. Michela. Excuse me.
Thank you. I really enjoy this, Jasna and Boban. I'm just saying that about group identity, it's already difficult to reconstruct individual identities for the 5th millennium. It's really a struggle because of the excavation, the current state of the research, and because of the spatial distribution of the objects. So, I mean, I think this is one of the main weaknesses for prehistory, not just for prehistory, also for later periods. Going through the classical stuff, I realized that with the prehistoric material, it's really more difficult. It was interesting that you found also a building, the traces of a building on the site. So, did you map the distribution of the shards there?
I think Boban will be better.
Yeah.
Boban, please.
Yes, we made the distribution of the sheds, but you know, only 8 square meters has been excavated, so yeah. It is hard to read any distribution of such small area. No.
Of course. But you should analyze the white paint anyway, or the white incrustation, whatever it is, because that's interesting. And again, the style, as we said, can change very quickly, much more quickly than technology. Is the technology the same as that presence on the other vessels and in the previous groups of pottery? That's also for your eyes, Jasna.
Yes. Can you please, I didn't hear it quite well. Can you please type?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is my internet is bad?
Probably. You're kind of blurred, so I cannot distinguish.
Okay.
Is the technology of the white painting should different? Not that I can see macroscopically, but it is. We wanted here to focus on the ornaments, on the decoration, but the paste used and the fabrics really differ according to different traditions. In the case of spiral, I think that a lot of organic temper has been added. So this is very similar to the Central Balkans in the early and in the Neolithic and in the Neolithic as well. So this is going to be a kind of agenda for the future research for this assemblage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions for Jasna and Boban? Claire Burke, maybe. Claire, are you here? Are you with us?
I'm here, but I think the question was just answered in a way.
Thank you.